Right, so we're very fortunate that we've got an amazing group of thinkers, thought leaders, change makers. What they have in common is they've inspired us, they've collaborated with us, and they've helped us create this business tool. So you'll hear from all of these people over the next 55 minutes or so. As a reminder, I'm sure everybody on this webinar is aware of what donut economics is, but our starting point is the donut. It's that compass for 21st century thriving. And it's our common goal to make sure that nobody is falling short on the essentials of life and that we are not overshooting our planet's boundaries. With that in mind, we've been translating these ideas, concepts, this framework for the business world. And in doing so, we've created something that is called Doughnut Design for Business. It's called Doughnut Design for Business because it is about how do we design business itself. And it's a guide to redesigning business through Doughnut economics that is in a workshop format. So it's for anybody to use, whether you're a business leader, whether you're an individual in a business driving big conversations of change. You might be an investor, you might be a consultant, you might be anybody working within or with businesses that can use this tool to essentially ask the big questions around how do we transform the deep design of business? And how do we go from that 20th century question of how does the design of your business block transformative action towards the 21st century version of a business world by asking the question, how could a redesign of your business unlock transformative action? We've created a workshop tool that takes roughly 4 or 5 hours to complete. And it's a journey. It's a journey that begins with what we are calling rapid donut mapping, which explores the impacts and dependencies based on the dimensions of the donut. It then goes into transforming or coming up with transformative ideas based on a regenerative and distributive ambition. I'm going to talk about each of the elements of this over the next 10 to 12 minutes, by the way, but to give you a rough overview, these are the first 2 parts of the workshop tool. Then we start to ask ourselves, what is it about this business's design that holds back transformative ideas and can unlock transformative ideas? Before moving towards, how can we look to redesign business to begin to enable and unlock those big transformative ideas that we know the world needs? Before finalizing that tool journey with the donut story of business redesign, going through everything that the business has engaged with, individuals have engaged with through the process of using this tool. The tool is on our webpage. It's tool 191, but if you click on tools, you'll see it. If you go to the business thematic page, you'll see links to it. It's in various formats. Alongside an accompanying paper that unpacks these ideas, builds on the amazing work that Marjorie Kelly has done that has been the starting point for a lot of the way we've translated donut economics to the business world. And hopefully you'll find all of the guidance, support, case studies, examples, activities, links to various documents, etc., all on the tool webpage. So who might use this tool? So if you're looking at this list, hopefully you're seeing yourself, because if you're in this webinar, you're probably interested in an ambitious transformation of the business world. You might be a business network, a startup incubator, you might be a business school or a trade union or an NGO or a think tank or a consultant. And all of these organizations are part or what we had in mind when we built this tool. Organizations that can walk through individual business or groups of businesses, or indeed people within a single business as well. So we've also got some rules and policies to make sure that we can protect the integrity of donut economics, to make sure that the ambition of donut economics remains and that commitment to a deep transformation of enterprise design remains central to the way it is used and engaged with across the business world. All of that is on our business page on doughuteconomics.org, as well as contained within the tool as well. So a quick tour through each of those parts I just described. Part 1, rapid donut mapping, which is essentially taking the donut and asking the question, how is the business impacting the social and ecological dimensions of the donut? And how are those social and ecological dimensions impacting the business. Once we've identified that broad perspective of exactly how the business is interacting with the donut conceptually, we then move on to what might be the most important part of the tool, which is how do we generate regenerative and distributive ideas and actions? Now, I'm going to talk through a little bit of the idea behind this because it's quite central. But essentially, it's how do we go from that 20th century version of business that has been driving a lot of the degenerative and divisive actions, behaviors, practices, investments that we've all been looking at for the last few years, that ask the question, how much financial value can we extract from this enterprise, towards that 21st century model of business that can drive the regenerative actions, that can enable those ideas and investments and strategies that we know we need, that ask the question, how many benefits can we generate in the way we design this enterprise? And what we mean by this is essentially going on a journey that sees it going from degenerative via sustainable all the way to regenerative. And we want to make sure that that journey doesn't get stuck in merely being sustainable, because in the words of the designer Bill McDonough, it is not enough to be 100% less bad. And given the scale of degradation of the living world, we must now repair and reuse and restore and regenerate. So it's all about creating those ideas, generating those ideas that are too often held back, that are going to be truly regenerative. But the donut has got two core elements to it. And this is the ecological side, but there's also the social boundary, the social foundation. And that's about making sure we create ideas that are going to be sharing opportunity and value with all who co-create it. Ideas that do not merely get stuck on making things inclusive, but being distributive in the core aspect of that design, whether it's profit sharing with living wage or open source design. How do we get to that level of distributive organizational behavior that is truly tackling inequality and marginalization? So a major thing, and we've been testing this through 22 different workshop series around the world with over 300 businesses. And what we really gathered from that is that transformative ideas often get held back. They get held back by businesses because of their outdated processes, because of their rigid financial targets, because of their short-term thinking, because of their culture of hierarchy. They get held back and they don't even get generated, let alone pursued. And instead, what we saw was that the businesses that can really push the envelope on the kind of ideas we need to help humanity into the donut, they're the ones that are suspending practicality for a minute, just to allow those ideas to evolve and to bubble through. They're the ones that have the broader perspectives, that long-term thinking, and a culture of courage that really inspires and aspires to have colleagues and teams that are generating really ambitious ideas that are going to help us get to regenerative and distributive goals. One of the activities in the tool is to visualize that thriving future, visualize that economy that we must get to, and we must get there in a hurry. And that economy is regenerative and it is distributive. And you have to imagine your business as belonging to that economy. And it asks the question, what has your business started doing to get there? And what has your business stopped doing in order to get there? Both those questions are important. And we found that the stopping doing actually has been really difficult. There might be harmful things that a business has in its products or services or its operations, and how do they move away from those aspects often becomes very difficult. It's also about asking questions and gathering insights from a broader range of individuals, including activists, including junior colleagues, including technical experts or industry leaders, people that are going to really push the envelope and help the business think beyond what might currently be feasible. We then asked the question a little bit more directly of saying, well, whose voice is not in the room? Whose voice should be in the room? Whether it's local communities or local forests or rivers or the air or the soil, and of course, workers in the supply chain or the direct employees of a business. It's critical that we begin to bring those perspectives in and generate those ideas that maybe currently are not going to be put on the table. And often the ideas that came out from those workshops, the most ambitious ideas that are truly going to help humanity into the donut, they do not seem possible today, but with work and with ambition, they can become possible. An example is a consumer goods company that we sort of went through this activity with, and we found that it's really possible to start coming up with ideas such as factories sequestering carbon, or profit sharing with employees, or paying suppliers in a way that enables them not just to get to a living wage, which is the bare essentials of what they need, but getting to a double of a living wage, for instance. So these are the kinds of ideas that we wanted to encourage. And once you bring up and start to create these ideas, you move to the final or the next stage, which is, how do we assess the current design of your business? How do we help businesses understand exactly how their current model holds back ideas and can enable ideas? Now, we focus on this not because it is the only way to change business behavior, but it is critical. And we recognize there are so many other important levers of change that are being exerted in so many different ways, whether it's public pressure, including consumers or labor unions, or government regulation, or the enlightened leadership that we're beginning to see across elements of the corporate world, or approaches to setting new targets and metrics and goals and measuring impacts much more effectively, or making the business case that actually this is going to be in the interests of the business longer term. All these are really effective and important, but sometimes they're not enough in themselves. And moving to enterprise design can help us start unlocking and unblocking various ideas. Now, in our journey, we talked to lots of different kinds of companies, and we had a lot of very private conversations with businesses. It was a safe space that allowed us to understand exactly what was going on. And they told us things that maybe in the public they wouldn't say, where in the public they would say that, you know, their enterprise design doesn't hold things back. But we talked to a footwear brand that said they prototyped an expandable shoe. It was going to be profitable, but wouldn't have hit usual margins, so they dropped it. We talked to a major beauty company who told us we should introduce refillable perfume bottles, but bringing consumers on board needs investment, and the payback period on that capital expenditure is too long. We talked to the head of innovation in a major clothing brand who said, I've been asked to create a range of regenerative clothing while being expected to deliver the usual 15% profit margin from the outset. This is impossible. Now, these sorts of examples demonstrate why we need to start moving to an enterprise design idea and looking at elements and ways to redesign business, to unlock very viable strategies and ideas that are currently not allowed to proceed. And to do so, we use the framework of purpose, networks, governance, ownership, and finance, which we've been inspired by the author and theorist Marjorie Kelly, who will be speaking in a few minutes, to start using this to really understand how the business's deep design enables and holds back those transformative ideas. So, a quick run through each of these. Purpose. I think we all hear about purpose in the business world. Purpose is something that a lot of companies are beginning to articulate. However, we start to ask questions of how do we move from profit-driven business as the core purpose to purpose-driven business? And we start to see this not just in what's written, but also how is it manifested in the operations, in the supply chains, in the products and the services of a company. In networks, we ask the question of how do we move from the old world of extractive relationships to the new world of collaborative partnerships? How do we move away from those commodified relationships and the relationship with government, for instance, where tax avoidance dominates, or the regressive lobby groups that too many businesses still belong to move into those collaborative partnerships with customers, with suppliers, with staff, with governments, with communities and partners. Then we move into governance. And how do we move away from that 20th century model of governance as being in service of finance to being governance in service of purpose? And here we look at boards, we look at the rules and the culture of a business, we look at the metrics of success, and essentially how companies are transparent and what are they reporting as well. But essentially, how are those decision-making processes and the levers of power being recreated to bring in a broader range of voices that can really pursue governance in service of purpose. Ownership. Well, a lot of these overlap with each other, and ownership is one that is critical across the board. But the question of how we move away from extractive ownership to generative ownership is becoming increasingly well understood. And we asked the questions of who owns the business, who should own the business longer term, and what are the interests and expectations of the different owners? How do we move the ownership model to one that is going to be in service of the purpose of the business? And lastly, the tool and the activities in the tool help ask questions around finance. And how do we move away from the 20th century model of finance serving financial returns to finance serving purpose? How do we start bringing in those flexible margins that might have unlocked and enabled the ideas we talked about earlier? How do we bring in those changes in dividend expectations or capital expenditure processes that can bring in the investment that all these huge ideas that are desperately needed will be enabled by? So, in summary, in terms of this section, we look at the benefits of redesign, and we say, look, you can redesign your business because it can help align those internal processes, such as product design processes, with your business purpose. We talk about you can do this in order to enable those new partnerships and engage stakeholders, bring in those security of supply that might be possible through having a different kind of design of your business. We talk about channeling investment through the deep design of the business to bring those transformative ideas to life. And we talk about locking in the legacy and protecting the mission of the business so that what might be on paper today as the core mission and purpose remains a core part of what the business is well into the future generations. And of course, we ask that you can have benefits of redesign because it helps us create an economy that is regenerative and distributive, and your business becomes regenerative and distributive by design. So once we go through that evaluation and ideas, we start asking, what does your business design currently do? Which aspects of it block your most transformative ideas? And which aspects can unlock the most transformative ideas that can bring those transformative ideas to life and help you to help humanity into the donut? We've got a few examples in the tool, but just to run through a quick sneak peek at one of them, when we look at the consumer goods company, for instance, that we talked about, well, a lot of what we found was that the supplier relationships are pulling it back, stopping it from doing a lot of the transformative ideas. Also, who's on the board? That only investors being represented on the board means that other impacted stakeholders don't have a voice, and the margin and dividend goals of the business often hold back investment into those ideas that staff may generate. And of course, there are things in the business that help it as well. For instance, impact reporting or employee share ownership, even though it might be small, brings in a new voice into AGMs of the business. And of course, that, when there is a high return to be made, then those social and ecological goals are pursued. So once we've done that evaluation, we move into the final part. And that final part asks the future question of, how do we redesign your business? How do you bring in those long-term commitments or employees and suppliers as representatives on your board, or margin and capital investment requirements that can be changed to enable transformative ideas, to allow you to help on various aspects of your goals and start to consider ways that it could be implemented? So after having done all that, the final step is to really write your donut story of why. What should be the main focus of the business? What are the most transformative, regenerative, and distributive ideas the business should be pursuing? And what should be redesigned to enable these kinds of ideas? So that's the journey, that's the tool. It's all available on our website, and the tool link is also on the business and enterprise thematic page. A quick thank you to all of the organizations that have helped us create this tool. They've all been bringing in different kinds of businesses, different perspectives, helped us sharpen, test, and bring this tool to life and get us to a point where we can launch it. And if you go to doughuteconomics.org/tools/191, that is where you will see the tool. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Kate, who's going to cover her perspective on the way we've developed these ideas over the last few years.
Great, thanks, Arinch. So this is so fantastic to be launching this tool right now today, because this has got a long backstory and we hope a long, really productive future. So I'm just going to tell a bit of the backstory. So I first drew the donut in 2012, and business has already started wanting to engage with it then. What does this mean for business? Can we be a donut company living in the donut? It was very clear there was a lot of interest. It's also very clear right from the outset that there's a real risk of something like this becoming quickly greenwashed. So when we set up Deal, we very clearly wanted to control this and get it right so that we would launch it in a way that means the idea won't be greenwashed, it'll instead be transformative. And that's exactly what we're aiming to do today. I'll just say that when I was writing Doughnut Economics, I drew a new big picture of the economy. Hope you can see it here. And the idea is, of course, the economy is embedded in society, embedded in the living world, but that inside the economy, there are at least 4 ways we provision for our wants and needs: through households, unpaid caring work, through the commons, through the state with public goods, and through markets. And for anyone who believes or agrees that the future economy that we want and need to create is in some way going to involve the market, some kind of market-based exchange, then we've got to be asking ourselves what kind of market actors will be able to actually belong in a world that's regenerative and distributed by design. We're immediately brought into this question of what kind of businesses could possibly belong in the future. And when I was writing Doughnut Economics, this was a massive question that I was struggling to figure out how to answer until I found this book by Marjorie Kelly, which was recommended to me by my good friend, John Fullerton. Thank you, John. And when I read Marjorie's book, it just like, oh, this is the way that is really compelling to approach this question. So I started weaving in some of the insights from Marjorie's book into the chapters on distributive by design and regenerative by design. But it was only after Doughnut Economics was launched and we started giving talks and connecting with businesses that we really drew on Marjorie's framework. And I know many people may have seen me holding up this little cardboard sign over the years. This is the deep design. So what we're doing today really launches as a tool these ideas that we've been speaking of for a long time, but now have turned into a tool that we invite companies and consultants and organizations and NGOs and think tanks, as Erich said, everybody to engage with what is the deep redesign of business that we need for the future. And we want to invite businesses to go on this long journey and move from those questions of how much can we get away with? Let's go straight past, well, how much do we have to do, towards how much can we possibly do? And we can all think of companies that are asking those different questions. We want to sit in that ambitious, transformative space. How much can we possibly do? And we believe that this tool is going to be a really, really effective, challenging way for those who aspire to be in that space or who are already in that space to think about the deep design of their enterprise. So that's a little bit of the backstory. And I'm so excited to hear about others, Marjorie and others, Andrea and Priya and others sharing today, and Willem, their engagement with these ideas. Let me just talk a little bit into the future. The reason we're putting this tool out is because at Deal, we believe, like many others believe, these kinds of ideas need to spread and scale at the speed of transformation that's required. We know we need a profound transformation in the design of business so that business actually stops pushing humanity out of the donut. Let's be honest, that's what it's done for far too long. Far too many forms of business do that. We need it to transform so that business actually starts being on the side that helps as a vehicle for bringing humanity in to meet the needs of all within the means of the living planet. Yes, it's a tall order. That's why this is a transformative agenda. So we need these ideas to spread at the speed, at the demands of the challenge we face. And yet we also don't want them to get greenwashed and watered down. So there's a real balance, a tension between that openness and integrity. And this sits at the heart of everything we do at Doughnut Economics Action Lab. So the way we're putting this out in the world, there is no certification. We don't certify and train and tick and you're certified. There's no fee for using this tool. We've decided that we want to be part of a movement that creates a 21st century commons. And so we put these ideas and these tools in the commons, but we ask not for money, we ask for respect of their integrity, and we ask for a reciprocity so that people share back their learning. And so we know the power of peer-to-peer inspiration, and we're going to be sharing some stories of companies that have already told their story through their deep design or indeed their redesign, and how that unlocks what's possible. That we know will be incredibly inspiring for others. For consultants and professional advisors wanting to use these tools, again, it's really important. We know there are many with a transformative agenda, and we believe there are also some who kind of mix it in a little bit with make it comfortable for business as usual. We don't want that to happen. So we ask any consultancy or professional advisors who want to use these tools to commit to deals, policies, and criteria, and we will share those with you. Our policy for business and consultants to say, yes, we commit to holding these tools to the standard that they're written, to hold the integrity of their intention. We use them in full. We won't cut and paste, take a bit of it and merge it with other things. We ask it to be used in its integrity in its entirety. And we ask that you share back. Any companies that want to use these tools, if you want to talk about your company in relation to the Doughnut publicly, then we ask that you talk about your deep design, not the design of your products, but the deep design of your company, because we believe that is ultimately what shapes everything that a company can be and do. And I know we're going to share the links to these tools, but they're all on the page that Erinch is sharing, so you can see what's the requirements and the criteria behind. So let me finish by saying this intention of putting these ideas in the commons is, of course, an experiment. We are learning as 21st century commoners how to share ideas and spread them at the speed and scale required while holding their integrity. And we ask you to help us learn and to make that work. We ask you to steward these concepts with us so that they do hold their integrity, so that they do spread well, and so that they're used to bring about the transformation in business that we all know is needed. Let me hand back to Erinch. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. And just to emphasize, we're collecting questions and chat as well from various individuals here. So do write your questions, do write your comments, and we'll do our best to answer as many of them as possible. And we'll have a bit of time towards the end. But I'm going to pass over to Marjorie Kelly now, who has been the conceptual inspiration for our work. Marjorie, over to you.
Well, thanks, Erinch, and thanks, Kate. I'm just thrilled to be here today. I'm zooming in from Boston area where I live. And I've been waiting a long time for someone to do what Kate and Erinch are doing with this tool, and that is to show business how systematically it can redesign itself to be regenerative by design and redistributive by design. And I first wrote about this. Kate held up my book, Owning Our Future. It took me a long time as a journalist watching business to understand that ownership design drives the behavior of business. You see, for example, businesses laying off thousands of workers as happened at Twitter just the other day, or you see businesses, chemical companies will send all of their factories to China so that they can continue emitting chemicals untreated into the ocean just to evade regulation. So it's ownership design that is driving this. It's this quest for maximum profits for capital. And ownership is really the foundation of every economy. Back in the agrarian age, you had land was the source of wealth, and kings and aristocrats owned the land. In the industrial age, the new source of wealth was factories and railroads, and the robber barons owned that wealth. And then that wealth passed into capital markets, which is the economy we have today, the financialized economy. So finance is really in the driver's seat, as Erinch talked about. What are the barriers to these various innovations? Well, it's always the demands of capital. We need higher dividends, we need higher profit margins, and so on. And so then the question is, how do you design business for something else? And that's what we have today in our hands with this wonderful tool. At the Democracy Collaborative, we have been doing research in recent years about what are the businesses that are already designed this way. And we found more than 50 businesses that are employee-owned and that are B Corps or benefit corporations. And this, we call this next generation enterprise design. This really embodies the great tool that we have here today. You have two design elements at work: ownership that's distributive, it's in the hands of workers, and the purpose of the business as a B Corp is to serve many stakeholders. And so you have being regenerative by design. So with these 50 that we found, looking at their B scores, which rates their social and ecological performance, more than 82% of these businesses were named best for the world by B Corp. So these are really top drawer businesses, and they include firms like Eileen Fisher, King Arthur Flour, Cliff Bar, Dansko, Gardner Supply in Vermont, which is not too far from where I live. Now, Gardner Supply, okay, so this is a for-profit company, and they deliberately moved next to the Intervale, which was a rich wetland and farmland. It had been turned into a dump. They moved there because they wanted to restore it. They pulled 1,000 tires out of this land. They pulled 35 cars out of this. They rebuilt the land. It now produces more than 500,000 pounds of food a year comes out of the Intervale. They incubate young farmers, and they also have an incubator for trees and shrubs that are used in watershed restoration. People come from all over the world to visit the Intervale. This is a project of a for-profit company, which is doing just fine financially. It's an example of a company as a living system. So when you have businesses that are solely in the hands of big capital, their sole purpose is maximizing, as Aaron said, how much financial gain can we pull out of this business? Companies become objects. They can be sold over and over again. Whatever life they had is squeezed out of them. So when we put ownership in the living hands of workers, and it's not the only model, but it's an important model, a company can be a living system with a living purpose. And that's what we're seeing. I'm excited to also say work I'm doing now is about how do you transition more conventional businesses into the hands of workers. And we've looked at a dozen funds that are formed specifically to transfer into the hands of employee ownership. One of them, for example, is the A&H Legacy Fund, Apis and Heritage Legacy Fund, and it's designed to create wealth specifically for Black and Brown workers. And it's also delivering competitive returns for investors. And so you can make quite competitive returns by creating a business that in perpetuity will be owned by workers. So there's some very exciting work there. So I'll just close by saying that it is possible to create these next generation enterprises. We've looked at a company as large as Recology in the Bay Area. It has over $1 billion of revenue. Its purpose is a world without waste, and it's 100% owned by workers. So it's possible to have substantial companies, good returns for investors with this next generation enterprise design, which is regenerative by design and redistributed by design. So thanks, Aaron and Kate, for your great work.
Thank you, Marjorie. That's really useful to hear. We're going to move over to Priya now, who's was one of the people, and she represents one of the organizations that helped us create a pilot workshop to test this tool, mostly with businesses spread across India. Priya, over to you.
Thank you so much, Erin. I don't know if you can hear me. Sorry, I'm having some network connectivity issues, but really, really excited that this tool is finally out. And I know a lot of the enterprises that participated in the workshop that we held were also blown away because nobody had ever asked them these questions that I think you asked. So very briefly, 200 Million Artisans really started out as a COVID response initiative, but we are and we have pivoted to become an ecosystem enabler, really to support investment, information, and innovation in the handmade sector in India, and to reimagine the potential of handmade in India. A huge part of the work that we're trying to do is to also equip a lot of the small businesses working with handmade to really reimagine what the future of business would look like, because all these people and some amazing founders that currently work with handmade are not only trying to support artisans, but they work at the intersection of livelihoods, climate, and gender. And not everything can be scaled quickly. Not everything is all about scale or profits. It's sometimes also about giving back to the communities, and how do we build then businesses that sort of embed those values and are taking people along, as opposed to saying, let's just serve the shareholders and a few people in the whole ecosystem. So thank you so much. And I know a lot of the enterprises are going to benefit, especially in India, as we sort of, many young enterprises are trying to build enterprises, or many young brands are trying to build models and business models that really serve the community, and are also trying to create impact on ground. Some examples, and I know that a lot of work in the handmade sector is already working on governance, working on ownership models. And this is an integral question when we look at something like handmade, because unlike other sectors, the artisans that bring value to an enterprise, they're not just replaceable workers or laborers. These are people who have, built skill sets, and who where skill sets have been passed on for generations at end, orally. And really, it is, if we are not able to take these uniquely skilled people along, somewhere, all these creative communities and cultural communities are going to, not want to pursue this anymore. And then there is no business left to build. And I think somewhere enterprises forget that, and somewhere I think big businesses and big investors forget that it is on the, on the back of these communities that we're building businesses that are bringing value to our consumers. And if we cannot take, and if we cannot, bring design businesses of the future, where we are addressing and taking everybody, it's going to be really difficult to, create not just impact, but really value and meaning.
Priya, I'm just going to cut in, Priya, because your voice is coming and going. Unfortunately, I think we're having some technical issues there, but really appreciate your support and helping us convene the workshop with the handmade sector, and to get a perspective from Indian SMEs across the country and subcontinent. So thank you so much. Sorry to cut you off, because technical issues unfortunately came in between. I'm going to pass over to Willem now. Now, Willem, Center for Economic Transformation was our main partner, our main collaborator, and the co-author of our paper. So we wanted to particularly hear from you on what your experience and insights were that you wanted to share, as well as any reflections you have for academia, and particularly for business schools around the world.
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me, by the way, Erinch? Perfect. Okay, we had a technical issue as well. Yeah, so we are here in Amsterdam at the Center for Economic Transformation, and actually our center was very much inspired by the work of Kate Raworth. We read her book, a couple of professors here, and we said, okay, we have to really radically change business education and also the way we look at businesses. And then fortunately, Kate Raworth was a professor of practice in our university. So we started to sit together and think, how can we really think about how businesses can relate to the donut? And then we started to work with the team, and Erinch, you took the lead by working with us and developing this tool. It was really great because we started to think, how can we involve businesses in a pilot? Because you need to understand what's going on and to really test things. You need to do it with real people, with real companies. So we assembled a team of 9 companies with whom we did a series of pilot workshops here in Amsterdam. We did 6 workshops, and we started to discuss these things about design. And to me, it was really so insightful to see how powerful this idea of design is, and redesign, that it's really going beyond the surface and really trying to understand what makes businesses tick, what makes them really do the right thing, not just what is legally required or do something, but really go deeper than that. And for us, it's that as researchers, that's very interesting to see and to try to find out those kind of things. But as a business school, we also discovered that there is so surprisingly little attention for this aspect of business design. So if you look at the textbooks of business schools or economics, you still see this really dominant paradigm of profit maximization, optimization, efficiency, innovation for the sake of making more money. And when you take this kind of perspective of the donut and applying these 5 design traits and looking how should businesses be designed in order to intrinsically really do things that are regenerative and redistributive, you have a totally new perspective. And it's really our ambition to bring this also into academic life, into business schools, to work more with companies to understand the pathway, because it's really not so easy. We found out in our pilot where we worked with companies that were really willing to do these kind of changes, that were really motivated and had a strong ambition. But even for them, it turned out it's not so easy to say, okay, let's change our design, let's redesign, because it's a journey. And this tool is really a great help to start the journey, to find out what are the great ideas, what are the really transformative ideas that we can do in our company or that we could do, and what is the reason why we don't do them actually. So how should we redesign? And that's why I'm really so happy and also proud to have been part of this development of this tool and also the paper. I recommend you all to read the paper also, because it really explains more in detail what the reasons are for the tool, what is the thinking behind it. It can really help you to understand better, especially when you are a moderator of working with companies. So Erinch, that's it for now. I hope we can really continue our collaboration and also make really inroads into the world of business schools, where a lot of change really needed.
Absolutely. That will be one of the focus areas that we'll be looking at over the next year or two. There are a lot of questions coming in around case studies, around who can use the tool, on how businesses can communicate about the tool. I put a link to our business and enterprise thematic page, but you can also find it quite easily on our website, doughuteconomics.org. And if you go to themes and click business and enterprise, you will see all the policies, how we work with this. It is in the commons, it is out there for people to use, but we've got some policies and guidelines to help protect this integrity as well. Having said that, I'm going to move over to Ljubka now. Ljubka, you helped us convene one of these workshops as well. You work as an accelerator, but also very familiar with the work of incubators, startup hubs around the world. And we're excited to hear from you on how that kind of organization and that kind of initiative can take this tool and use it.
Hi, thank you, Ernst, for the lovely introduction and for this invitation. It's really a true pleasure and honor for me to be in this company. The Doughnut Economics has been a bit of my personal navigator to understand the macro context in which we work, in which our planet interacts with our society and our economy, and also gathering inspiration of what could be, what could the future look like. So thank you for that. A bit of background on our work. I'm representing the Impact Hub Network and our Accelerate 2030 program. For those of you who are not familiar with this work, the Impact Hub Network is one of the world's largest entrepreneurial communities for impact at scale. We're present in more than 100 locations, more than 60 countries, with co-working spaces, but more importantly, with programs that support impact-driven entrepreneurs in setting up and growing their ventures. I personally am connected with Impact Hub Geneva and leading our Accelerate 2030 program, which we started in 2016, jointly with the United Nations Development Program, exactly with this conviction that businesses and particularly entrepreneurs have a key role to play in tackling our world's most pressing challenges as framed within the Sustainable Development Goals. So we embarked on this journey to identify entrepreneurs that tackle the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly across the Global South, or the global majority, as we're trying to introduce some new, more inclusive terms, and help them in scaling their impact. So in the past 6 years, we've been doing this work across more than 33 countries, supporting nearly 500 entrepreneurs. And we really have had the pleasure to work with entrepreneurs that are really on the other side, really wanting to make a change, to tackle some really pressing challenges. We've had examples of companies in Brazil working on removing chemicals from agriculture. You got to meet some of them at our workshop. Companies in Indonesia with waste processing technologies, generating products that can be used for other industries, working in the circular economy concept. So there are really a lot of these doers and change makers already. But what tools like this one actually help us do, and how they help us additionally support them, is really, well, first of all, what's needed, and a lot of the speakers already touched upon this, is redefining what we believe is success for business. At the moment, success for business is maximizing profit, and we kind of remove all these other metrics or parameters. So even companies that have at the core of their mission to do good, they're still evaluated at in the market based on their ability to maximize profit. So if we go to really redesigning the fundamentals of business, then we can actually communicate and embed this other very noble social environmental mission that businesses can actually drive. So then it's also connecting the mission of companies with the wider context. So this tool can actually, when I first read the Doughnut Economics, I also had the questions, how does this translate into businesses? How does it help entrepreneurs put it in practice? Well, now this tool actually contextualizes how a certain business can connect their work with their wider local and global environment when it comes to social and ecological parameters. It can help to safeguard the mission of the business in the long term, right? It's embedded in there. So whatever change of leadership, it's there to safeguard the initial aim. And then what it does is also being a strong communicator to other stakeholders and attracting the types of partners, and particularly funding. And I'm happy that we will come to that topic in a little bit as well, which is also a defining force in business, right? So entrepreneurs can do a lot of redesign, but we need to work with the other stakeholders to make sure that that this impact is driven beyond the borders of the internal team of a company. So to summarize the ways in which the tool can be helpful for us and the people we work with. So it's first of all, understanding and sense-making tool of the wider macro context. It's very importantly, it gives an alternative blueprint. Very often people might just not have access to different role models and examples of what could be, so they operate within what they know. And with these kind of tools and models and examples, we can actually present what's possible. It also provides a concrete roadmap. This is really important, especially for entrepreneurs that have very limited time to do a lot of strategic work beyond their yearly strategy sessions. It's really giving a step-by-step guide on the things that can be done in order to redesign the fundamentals of their business. And it makes them also an active player within their global and local context. They can see that they can actually make actual change and have very practical tools in how to analyze and how to take action on that. And you also posed the question on how we as organizations, as incubators, accelerators, business support organizations can integrate this in our work. So for us, it's adding this to our curriculum. I don't know of a lot of incubators, accelerators, network support programs that have this part. We do support the HR processes, the leadership, choosing the right organizational structure under the law, but really going to this deep level of questioning and analyzing the fundamental building blocks of a business. This is a really good framework that can help. And really important thing, and I think it was already mentioned, is giving the space and the community for entrepreneurs to stop and think about this. Because once they're given the space to reflect, which often they don't get, or to be asked the right questions, they come up with brilliant ideas. in the workshop that we did together, one of the entrepreneurs actually came up with an idea: what if we give our product for free, and then we actually generate our revenues from carbon credits? So these are just, and of course, the importance of role models and a wider community. I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Luca. We're running quite low on time. Andrea, I'm going to pass over to you. I'm also going to share in the chat the project that we are doing together. We're getting a lot of questions on what's next, what else is coming. Investment is one of the most important things we're doing next, and we're doing that with you. We've also got some work coming up on policy, what this means for policymakers that next year you'll hear more about, as well as a place-based starting point for another tool that will build on a lot of the ideas here. So I wanted to put some of that out there, but in the next 4 minutes, Andrea, if we can get a bit of an overview from you and your perspectives, and then I'll wrap up after that.
Sure thing. I'll thank you, Erin, and everyone. I'll keep it super quick. It's just so great to follow so many visionaries and luminaries, and even just from the quality of the chat, kudos to you all for the community that you're bringing together. So we at Transform Finance are a small nonprofit research and education and implementation partner for those that are trying to challenge legacy investment approaches and see the transformative investment models. And this really seems like an amazing framework for doing that. Now, why focus on the finance part? Because as Marjorie was saying, finance drives too much of what business does or cannot do. And if we want to see transformation, we need this accelerant of finance to be on board, right? There are great ideas right now that either get held back by investors or entrepreneurs might fear that will put them at a disadvantage in terms of how to capitalize their projects. But right now, so much of the power just rests basically with those that hold the capital. But as Marjorie said in the other book, in the Divine Right of Capital, right? This is not God-given. This is not like the laws of gravity. It can change. It is changing. And if there's one thing that I want you to walk away with is that investors are not the enemy. Investors can be supporters for this transformation. And part of the work that we are doing with Erin and with Theo is really to enable the investors to be part of this transformation. They need to understand that there is a variety of options out there, right? There is a whole beautiful universe of employee ownership models, as were mentioned before, purpose trusts, and others that if investors, we hypothesize, are familiar with, they will be more willing to capitalize. So we're hoping to do a bit of a comprehensive typology. Some of that work has already been done, but it's not fully out there. And put it out in an investor-friendly manner so that those that are aligned in principle with the donut can see what are the options, either actual corporate structures like a trust, or tools like a golden share or a mission lock type of mechanism, and figure out how their capital can go in there. So we see this really as a collaboration with the investors. And I want to ask everyone, if you are on the investment side and you're familiar with this, please do reach out and be part of this project with us. If you believe that indeed the structures will benefit from a new community of investors being empowered to participate and thereby changing the rest of their investment activity, I do see this. Somebody asked about the vision for 2030, 2040. I do think that if this is embraced, in 10, 20 years, we could have a remarkable transformation in the economy at large. We could really see investors stopping the initial, what we saw on the initial slide of like how much capital, how much return can I get out of this, but really how is my capital one of the tools or the accelerants that can enable this transformation. So hope I kept this short enough.
Thank you, Andrea. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to our partnership as well to explore what investment design looks like to enable these kinds of enterprise designs. I want to acknowledge that there have been so many questions that we haven't gotten to or done justice to, both in the chat and the Q&A. If we haven't answered your question yet, and I think that's the majority, we apologize, but we will be creating different spaces over the next few months where we can engage with these questions much more deeply. We'll be creating ongoing webinars where we can talk through how the tool is being used, what are we learning from it, and also giving a bit of an introduction to the tool for those that need it in more detail. So all of that will be communicated separately. But for now, I just want to thank everybody for all the inspiration, all the support, all the collaboration. We are moving the conversation from what we want business to do to what we need business to become in order to pursue those ideas, to pursue those actions, those practices, strategies, investments, all of the things that we know we need. We're moving it to the next level. So we're really looking forward to our continued collaboration. We're putting it out there for you to drive that conversation, for you to drive that change. And we really hope this tool will be helpful and you'll be part of our journey as we take it forward. Thank you all, and I'll leave it there.